Good afternoon, folks, and welcome along to Talking Amateur Radio, Taking Amateur Radio in Schools. This is 3 for the price of 1. We've got Lyle, Chris, and Simon, and we're going to be talking about everything from soldering to coding, Morse to satellites, propagation to electronics. So we'll hear first from Lyle, first licensed in 1978, and as GM4 XID in the 1980s. Business career through Motorola Telecoms into management roles and the likes of Scottish Power, Scottish Telecom, Rakel and Pipex. Chris, M0KPW, we'll be hearing from next. He's been licensed since 2010, involved in amateur radio since 1989 after getting interested via his G3 uncle. Spent many years as a shortwave listener and first joined the RSGB back in 89, but fast forward many years, Chris is now active on HF, VHF and above, enjoying SOTA, VHF contesting, QO100 and HF operating. And then finally, we'll get Simon G4WQG, who is the RSGB regional representative for Wiltshire, and as part of the Swindon District Amateur Radio Club, brought amateur radio to students at Swindon UTC during British Science Week 2023. First, though, we'll hand over to Lyle.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lyle Smith, and it'll be a pleasure to share my experience of introducing amateur radio to my school in the Northwest Highlands of Scotland, Mallock High School. Before I start my talk, I need to share with you that I benefited from an amateur radio club at my school. And Brian Hardy, G4BIP, was the chap who was licensed at my school and ran the lunchtime club and the Friday 9 club. So he was GM4BIP before becoming a G4BIP. So thank you, Brian. So establishing an amateur radio club, you've got me for about 10 minutes, by the way, and a very good afternoon to the live stream watchers as well. Let's get going, let's get started. So Mallock High School is located about 500 miles from here. It's just up the road. And it's a picturesque village and on the mainland, the northwest coast of Scotland. And you'll see from the images there, it's also a very busy fishing port and harbour area. And my school overlooks the Sound of Sleat to the Isles of Skye, and we also overlook the Isles of Egg and Rum. It's absolutely stunning. So we have about 600 village residents, so it's actually quite a small community. The school, the high school, has 105 pupils roughly, but we have a cluster of junior schools that feed into the senior school, so we've got roughly 150 pupils in all. And I do actively encourage the youngsters in the junior school to come to the radio club in the senior school. It's a high-achieving school. In the most recent exams, Mallock High School, because the class sizes are quite small and education is really high quality, Mallock High School achieved the top marks for National 5 in the whole of the Highland region, and it came in the top 3 for all of the exams. So it's a super, super location and great school. At first, my first task when I went to the school in May 2022, I had to befriend the local amateurs. And the first thing I did was I got involved with, I got GM4 OES, Gordon Liddell, and also GM3 ALZ, Fred Gordon, involved in pulling together this amateur radio club. We historically needed 3 licensees to get the club call sign. I also had to obtain the buy-in from the head teacher, and that was quite easy. He was very supportive, and I needed somebody to pay for textbooks and pay for the exam fees, and that went really well. Ofcom were very helpful, and we secured the call sign GM5 MHS from Mallock High School. And we also had lots of support willingly provided by the RSGB. Positive destinations. What I'm really looking for when I go to the school is where do the children end up when they leave school? Now, roughly half of them will go on to university and colleges, and the other half will go into things like fishing, fish farms, emergency services, and I very quickly realised they all need to have this basic understanding of two-way radio communication, how it works and how to do the message handling. And in addition, we've got HM forces coming to recruit from the school. We've got the Army, Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy. They're all coming to try and capture the interest of the youngsters. And some go on into land management, forestry and deer stalking, etc. And I like structure. And the structure that works for me is the RSGB foundation course. It's not difficult, folks. And when you've got structure, you get commitment from the school pupils. And that's what you really need. When it comes to CVs, the youngsters that go on to university and college, they'll hopefully come across amateur radio clubs and societies. But the local employers in our area are looking for extracurricular activities from the school children. So even as teenagers, the children are competing against one another to get local jobs. And if you've got something different on your CV, if you've got a Radio Society of Great Britain certificate, if you've got an Ofcom license, that's different. You've studied, you've gone the extra mile, you've applied some brain cells, and then you're being trusted with a radio transmitting license. It's different and it works. So that's what employers are looking for. And that was the hook for me. When I explained this to the children in school assemblies, it's quite easy to do a school assembly when you've only got 105 pupils in front of you. And you can actually say to the front row, you know, how old are you? You're 11, 12 years of age. NASA are going to have a accommodation on the moon by the end of the decade. So by the time you're leaving school, you'll be able to communicate that far. Anyway, that's another story. One of the things that happened about a year ago, we attended a Bletchley Park presentation the day before the 22 convention last year, and I was really impressed by the NRC team. And of course we ended up coming here the following day and met Martin Baker, and his team at the NRC are great. Met Martin Baker here, and he said we should really get the Mallock High School pupils down to Bletchley Park. They would just love this. I said, well, it might bust the school budget for travel because we're 500 miles away. So Martin very quickly came up with the idea, let's do a Zoom. And what we ended up doing, we ended up planning for this presentation from Martin and his team. And we did it on Microsoft Teams, and it worked. So before the presentation, I had briefed the history department, the maths department, and the physics. So they were all coaching the children about Bletchley Park before the presentation. And so thanks to my colleagues at Mallock High School, they were really good. Martin did a superb presentation. I think it lasted about 45 minutes, and you held their attention for 45 minutes, so well done. And after the presentation, we managed a live 40-metre QSO between NRC and Mallock. And the kids just loved it. The following week, I was invited into an S3 maths lesson, and this was age group, roughly 15 years of age, and they were doing codes and ciphers. So I went in with my straight Morse key, and I went in with a Dayton Morse tutor, thanks to GM4 OAS, and the kids love Morse code. They're like sponges, and they just love Morse code. It was great fun. Key activities, what we do, we have a lunchtime club on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have a after-school club on a Wednesday. And we set up to become an RSGB exam centre. It's very easy for a school to become an exam centre. You need to have a car park, toilets, and exam in progress. So we're actually good. We're practiced at exams, so we're really good at this. But RSGB exam team are very, very helpful. We also outreach to the local community. And we've taken part in GB22 YOTA, Youngsters on the Air, last year. We're already booked up to do GB23 YOTA for this year. And we really enjoyed taking part in British Science Week Connections. And for Connections, I got 11-year-old children from the junior schools involved, and they loved it too. So they're now in the senior school, so they worked out really well. Charitable grants. The RSGB were very helpful and suggested that we contacted Radio Communications Foundation. And I don't mind telling you the short story. I didn't know what to ask for, so I thought, pop in a nice letter and I'll ask them for £500. And they contacted us and I said, we don't give money, we don't give cash. It's got to be for a specific project or a piece of equipment. So we had arranged to erect a new VHF antenna system with rotator, and it came to about £534, if I remember rightly. And the RCF said, yeah, we'll fund that. So we got a new antenna system from RCF. I also have to thank the trustees of the Macintosh Foundation. The Macintosh Foundation are very close to Mallaig and Lochaber, very supportive. And when they heard that we were training youngsters on radio communication and for the local area, they supported us. So thank you very much. Challenges. Because I work for Highland Council in a school, I have a PVG scheme membership. So Disclosure Scotland is slightly different from the English one, but basically I'm trusted to work with school children, so it's quite easy for me to organise the lunchtime clubs and the after-school clubs. Another challenge is that I found that newly licensed foundation holders benefit from a buddy, what I call a buddy. It's not just a case of doing a foundation license, you've got to then start thinking about doing the intermediate and the full, so they need to have a buddy. And another challenge, other school clubs. I'm competing with Catan board games at lunchtimes, I'm competing with Duke of Edinburgh, I'm competing with football team, volleyball team. The list goes on. It's about 12 different activities at lunchtime, so it's a busy old time. Another thing we have to be flexible with is the flexible learning. So I've got one 17-year-old just now who wants to go into the Merchant Navy, and the only time he can come to the radio club is on a Thursday morning. So thanks to Highland Council, I can coach him on a Thursday morning. Quotation. Hopefully you can all see that, and that's super. Let me read this. There's a really important bit in the middle. Mallaig High School is delighted with the positive contribution made by the introduction of amateur radio to our school community. The introduction of the lunchtime club and the after-school club is proving to be very popular, and outreaching to our local communities contributes in so many ways. The club has allowed pupils to experience success, whatever their level of academic achievement, and to feel part of a wider community on an equal footing. Very powerful. The STEM links are strong, and we look forward to introducing as many pupils as possible to the wonders of radio. Sincere thanks for Lyall's generosity with his time and expertise, and for the support provided by the RSGB and the Radio Communications Foundation. That middle bit, it doesn't matter the academic level that the children are presenting themselves with to you for a foundation course. The foundation course is very achievable for all youngsters. And finally, with a few sunsets and a sunrise at the bottom, I have to thank Colin Smith, my late uncle. He introduced me to amateur radio when I was about 9 or 10. Brian gets a mention again, G4VIP. I have to mention Finlay Baxter, GM3VEY, who taught me my City and Guilds RAE at the Kingsway Technical College. And I have to thank Fred Gordon and Gordon Liddell, who have been superb in helping me establish Mallaig High School Amateur Radio Club. And I'll take questions later on.
Just hand over to Chris. Well, since you've still got got a mic. Can you give Chris the OK to go?
Oh. Are you ready for me?
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. For some reason, the slides aren't moving over, despite... Let me have a... Oh. There we go. There we go. Right. Thank you to Lyle. That was interesting. So for me, it's just a short introduction on the after-school club that I ran for my daughter's primary school earlier this year. So this was for a small village school in South Cumbria in 84 Square. It's a typical South Cumbrian village school. There's about 50, 60 children there from nursery up to year 6. We'd originally planned this for 2020, but obviously for various reasons, it was postponed due to COVID. So it didn't actually take place until June and July of this year. And although there's 60 kids at the school, it was sort of decided with myself and the head teacher that we'd open it up to the older children of the school. So that's children in years groups 4, 5 and 6. So basically children between the ages of 8 and 11. I sort of didn't really know what to expect, didn't know how many children we'd have attend. I knew there'd be at least one, which was my daughter. And she did a good job of signing a few other children up. The school charges £1 for these 1 hour after school clubs, whatever the club is. So if nothing else, I thought it was an hour's reasonably cheap childcare. So I thought I was guaranteed to get somebody signing up. But in the end, there was 10 in total, and they were all 10 children who actually genuinely wanted to be there and were genuinely interested to learn what we were doing. Also, Lyle touched on it earlier. My DBS check has expired because I don't need it for work anymore. So due to safeguarding, obviously a teacher would need to be present when I was on site with the children. Oh, the aim of the after school club really was to do something a bit different, a different type of after school club. Primarily introduce the children to amateur radio, and also look to introduce the school adults to the hobby as well. So that's the teaching staff. And primarily we were looking to pass greetings messages. We were looking to start small and pass greetings messages on HF. Why HF over anything else? Simply because of the location didn't lend itself to trying to pass messages on VHF or anything like that. So we had 5 weeks to play with. Week 1 was always intended being a brief introduction to amateur radio. And I produced a handout, a booklet that the children would work with over the 4 or 5 weeks. It was very basic. It had a basic introduction to the hobby, a page on the phonetic alphabet, log sheets, designing QSL cards, a very basic script for passing a greetings message, and also a map of Europe with prefixes on the off chance that we might work outside of the UK. And I held this up on the first week to show the children the prefixes and said, here's a map of Europe, etc. And one of the lads put his hand up and said, oh, that's not a map of Europe. And he was quite right, because the map actually contains some of Asia and South Africa. So he'd obviously paid attention to his geography lesson that week. The other thing we did in week 1 was I took on my ICOM 705, and with the dummy load connected, the kids were quite excited to be talking into the mic and seeing the voice on the display. So week 2 was really going to be the first week of actually getting on air. Now, the original plan had been for me to go and set up in advance. It had always been intended to be an outdoor activity. We were going to utilise the school outdoor areas. Very simple setup. I was using an 857 and my sorter kit, which is a lynx dipole for 20 and 40 meters, and a fiberglass mast. Takes me 5-10 minutes at the most to get that set up. But with 10 pairs of helping hands, it took the best part of half an hour. And everybody wanted to help put in a peg or hold something or pull out the wire. And do you know what? It was all part of the fun. We didn't get much time on the air because of it that week. But actually, the kids were really excited to actually get hands-on and get things set up. So that first week, we got 3 greetings messages passed out of the 10. Week 3 was a bit wet. So we did some of the other activities. The kids designed QSL cards, practiced a bit of CW, took a couple of keys and oscillators in, and they loved practicing some CW and PMRs. And the other thing we did is we did that week's spelling test, but using the phonetic alphabet. So the kids had to do their spelling test spelled phonetically. And then weeks 4 and 5 were very much getting on air and getting the greetings messages passed. But I went up in advance, had everything set up so that when the kids came out at 3:15, we were ready to get on the air and hit the ground running, so to speak. Just wait for the next slide. There we go. So this is just an example of some of the QSL cards that the children did. Very much like you and I, they made them a bit more personalised. So the chap at the top's into motocross, so hence his motocross imagery. One in the middle likes helicopters, hovercrafts, things like that. And the one at the bottom's a bit more of a traditional scene of the village with the school on the hill there. And it's quite interesting, the chap who designed the one in the middle and sent it to Rob, G0HRT. And Rob actually sent some QSL cards in for the greetings messages. So I gave them out the following week, and the kids were really pleased to receive the QSL cards. The next slide is, again, just a couple of others outside. So you can see the activity area we had to play with, plenty of room for stringing up aerials and doing various things. And the other things we did, which I've not talked about in great detail, is they played around with some PMRs and ran around the fields with some PMRs as well, which they thoroughly enjoyed. What I thought was, when I was doing this club, I thought it'd be nice for the children to receive an award or achieve something from it. And rather than just a certificate of participation, I thought it'd be nice for them to actually, achieve something. So I was already familiar with the RSGB's Radio Surfer Award. And the idea of that award is one of the aims is to encourage young people to try something new. And that's exactly what we were trying to achieve with this, with this after school club. The way the award works is it requires each child or young person to achieve the number of points relevant to their age. So if they're 8 years old, they need 8 points. 18 years old, they need 18 points. And there's plenty of criteria to choose from. From an operating on air point of view, it's obviously more geared towards licensed amateurs. So I spoke with the RSGB and asked for a slight tweak to the scheme, just to see if they would allow us a point for passing the greetings message, because that was really, the main aim of the after school club. And the RSGB were very positive and quite happy to tweak the award for that. Oops, okay. This just very quickly shows you the points that the children achieved. Obviously, we had children aged between 8 and 11, so some of them did do some slightly different criteria. They all joined the club, they all sent QSL cards, they all did log in. And do you know what? They were really, really thorough with the logs that they kept, whether that was their own greetings messages or other greetings messages. And there was a few times where I worked a few stations, so they could get used to hearing normal QSOs and they were always checking the time, they were checking the call signs and all that sort of thing. So they were very, very thorough with that. And the 5 weeks sort of went a bit like this 10 minutes, went by in a bit of a blur. So I was invited to attend the last assembly of the year, the day they broke up for some holidays. And I presented all 10 of them with their Radio Surf Award certificates. And the pictures there of us doing it. And it was quite good because by week 2, the kids were already asking, not only was I coming back next week, was I going to come back next year? And the teaching staff had asked as well if I was willing to come and do it again. And so really, it was a really basic introduction. This has been a whistle-stop tour of what we did over the 5 weeks. But we're definitely going to do it again next year, take advantage of the space outside, and probably do some more activities as well. And then just finally, you can find more information out about the Radio Surf Awards on the web address there, more information about the activities I run on my website, and if you've not already seen it, there is a 3-page feature on the After School Club in the November 23 edition of RadCom. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to everyone in the room and online. My name is Simon Harris, G4WQG. Been licensed for 40 years, almost. Makes me feel really old, especially when I tell the kids how they look at me and like, oh, that old man, indeed. So I took amateur radio to a school in Swindon during British Science Week, along with members of Dom, who sat down here, chairman of the Swindon District Amateur Radio Club. We went, it was obviously British Science Week, in 2003 with the theme of connections, which is a great opportunity to use radio communications for that connection here and abroad, as you'll find out in a second. UTC Swindon, it's a local school. It was quite easy to get in here because my son was a student there. He isn't now, he's got his first job, but it was a good way of getting in. I'll talk a little bit later about some issues that I found, and it would have been maybe a bit more difficult if there wasn't that sort of relationship. We have got British Science Week 2024, and that theme is time. And there is an opportunity to obviously get amateur radio involved perhaps with data, with timing on FT8, etc., etc. If you're into FT8, some people aren't. But there's another opportunity, obviously, to get back and use this as another way of getting in. We are going to be revisiting UTC Swindon next year for exactly this reason. If not before, but I'm still in negotiations with the head because they've got some changes, but that's another problem I've got to overcome. What is a UTC? Now, it's a university technical college. It's government funded with a STEM focus, and these pupils range in the age of between 14 and 18 years old. The schools do provide a core subject, of course, with a national curriculum with maths, English and science, but they also offer specialist science and engineering programs of various different types. And alongside these provide technical qualifications in the chosen area that some of these students go down, which would be computing and engineering, in the case of UTC Swindon. Now, each of these schools are partnered with local employers and universities. In the case of Swindon, it's Swindon is Oxford Brookes University, that's their partner. But if you have a look, there's a link at the end on my last slide to look at all the UTCs. They are based in England. I couldn't find any outside of England. But there's a real opportunity because of the technical background. These students, most of them choose to go to these schools out of the mainstream because they have got a preference for engineering, computing, etc., etc. So I said that we're 40. How can we engage? Well, let's just contact them directly and introduce our hobby, which is fairly technical. We can use the physics and science where there is a section in the national curriculum, which is radio propagation. So it's another opportunity to discuss the hobby and have that way in to engage with the school. Some of the issues, obviously, Lyle, we've all kind of identified some issues with safeguarding. Now, when Dom and I have been to a couple of schools, and safeguarding is an issue, neither of us hold DBS certificates at the moment. It's getting teacher allocation to actually look after us, to walk us around the school, make sure we don't do anything out of hand. Particularly in UTC, we had some great teachers, and they were very forthcoming. In fact, one of them was quite interested himself in what we were actually doing. Some of the other issues were, I had a long conversation with the head of this particular school. They were looking, was this just a one-off or a two-off? They were kind of looking for a permanent, perhaps talking about a permanent club and radio station there. One of their concerns was installing antennas on the building and having access to their facilities issues. And that is something that we need to discuss with them to see if we move forward with a club. I don't know how easy it was for Lyle to get that equipment set up. But that's another thing we need to be dealing with. So this is a picture of young Dom here. At school, we'd set up in one of their labs. Simple HF setup with what was it, a 590 Dom we had, I think? TS 590, a simple inverted V. And we just ran FT8, which most of our contacts were in FT8 because we were able to obviously run WSGTX and to display live. So when we're sending a signal, we had those locations displayed on the map exactly where we were being seen, and the kids were pretty appreciative of that. Had we not had that technology, it's kind of difficult. You put, we all find in the many years ago, we put a call out. We had no idea where we were being heard. We were using the modern day tools that we've got to give a visualization to these kids of where we can reach with some really simple equipment. We had multiple sessions. We had the picture. These kids were interested, by the way. I know they don't look like it. The one right in the middle facing is my son, and he actually surprised myself and Dom because he asked some very intelligent questions. They've all got full-time jobs now, so we had multiple sessions. We saw quite a few kids through the day. Demonstration of different modes, FT8. We did a couple with some SSB contacts. But again, we see instantaneous reporting where we're being heard around the world. We did have some interesting questions on how these pupils could they use radio in a way that might harm somebody. It was one of the questions. It's like, no, we're not here for that. But they were, very strange thoughts. Off the back of it, we had another invitation to another school in Melksham, and we went down and again, pretty much set up the same setup. They were to younger kids, 12-year-olds, 11, 12-year-olds, first year of secondary. That was a very interesting experience, having younger kids and trying to keep the interest, looking at Dom and I describing this hobby. But it was a good day, Dom, I think you might agree. And we have got another invitation to do a careers event at that school, also off the back of this. And this moves on to the National Radio Centre. It's not all just about kids and schools. I volunteer for the NRC. And what do? We communicate. All of us are radio amateurs. We communicate. We want to talk to people. The more you talk to people, and the more you can be positive, then people will potentially look at it. Is that a hobby I might be interested in? We demonstrate our equipment. If everyone been to the NRC, I'm sure you have, and if you haven't, you need to come and visit us. We demonstrate the equipment. We explain how it works. We discuss it. We open up radio. Everybody has got a radio device in their pocket, even kids, mobile phones, Bluetooth headphones, speakers, Wi-Fi at home, all the PlayStations. Contactless cards, the simplest thing. Do you know how it works? No, we don't. It's a radio inside the card. And then their parents and the kids are going, wow, that's unbelievable. You know, the world runs round, RF is everywhere, and we cannot live without it. It's going to generate more interest. Well, as Lyle said earlier on, it's a hook. What is a hook? My hook was CB in 1979. That was my hook, because we didn't have social media. We just got to get the hook to go for it. Encourage old and new, not just looking for new people to enter the hobby. We've come across some licensed amateurs who have forgotten the hobby, moved away for various reasons. Encourage them to come back. You know, we've got an example that Don might mention earlier on about an old licensee that he just came across a couple of weeks ago. He's now licensed, back with the radio and on the air. And finally, mentor people. We're all young ones. We're all new to this hobby. We need to provide mentoring if we can to help people. Don't put people off the hobby that might have just come into it. Let's mentor them and keep them in the hobby. New opportunities. Now, this is an example. This is, I think, Morse code is definitely an opener. When you come to the NRC, we got a couple of Morse keys on the front desk. The majority of kids and quite a few adults, the first thing they want to do is press the Morse key, send in their name, give them a certificate. If that's a way in, it's the earliest form of digital communication. It's a 1 and a 0. So this is basically the story that I was very quickly going to, if I can get my device to work, just bear with me. So the picture here shows a girl called Pippa. She's 12 years old and her dad. Now they visited Porthcurno Telegraph Museum 4 or 5 years ago, and she did a little bit. They did run a little bit of a Morse thing: send your name, listen to the code, can you do it? That sparked this girl's interest. She was 7, 8 years old at the time. They came to the NRC. She was then given a snail Morse key. Didn't have any instructions how to build it. Sent a letter to, I think Steve M1ACB was involved in this. She was sent the instructions, had a letter published in the back of Radcom in 2019, and that was the thing. To see her name in the back of Radcom with something so simple as a snail Morse key, that was a hook, and she just kept going with that. They bought the foundation manual. It took a few years for them to actually do the studying. They actually returned to NRC in July and spoke to one of our volunteers, Robert Tickle, and that was the moment that they decided to go and both sit the foundation. Passed it a couple of weeks ago, came to the NRC a couple of weeks ago on her last in duty, never touched a radio ever in their life until operating on JY1's equipment there on 40 meters. Okay. So as you can see, that was the first time she'd ever pressed a microphone out. Very, very mic shy, but it's just about mentoring. So I'm working, myself and Dom are working with Stephen and Pippa, and I know they've got a meeting with Martin next couple of weeks, perhaps to come do a regular visit to the NRC. But it's just an example of, we need to work with younger people. And not even younger people. Our dad's, not particularly old, but, he's a new licensee. Again, a bit mic shy, but they both made those first important contacts. I'm now actually working with them both to secure some outreach at 3 more schools in Abingdon. So that will give us another way in. Now, Pippa's friends are really jealous that she's got this license. And she really wants to get her friends to be licensed along with her, and they can work together. And when I offered that we'll come down and we'll demonstrate, absolutely bit my arm off. So we're working on that, and that will happen very shortly. The final thing, we're communicators. Let's talk to anybody to get anybody into this hobby. Be positive to reintroduce and introduce new people to the hobby. And that's what we need to do, because look at the demographic. There are real opportunities. And there's a few links there for the Radio Centre, for the UTC. And just wonder if there's any questions for any of us.
Yes, any questions? We've got 2 minutes left, I think. Any questions? No? Well, can I ask that we thank all the speakers in the usual way?